There's like a subtle differentiation with having your actions be based off of, like you touched on, like a wholesome motivation, pure motivation. And then there's others where you behave where you think maybe you're acting out of the best intentions, but the motivation could deep down be fear-based. You're reacting. So I try to actively observe my own thoughts when it comes to making decisions. I find that making decisions based out of fear that something may happen or may not happen, either acting or not acting because of that fear, can be like really devastating and detrimental for progress and even just happiness and peace. So it may not be a concept you've considered, but what are some ways that you can prevent yourself from being driven by fear rather than by that positive motivation?
I think fear's a funny thing.
It's so subtle.
It is, I think it can be both, right? It can be really subtle at times, and maybe you're like subconsciously thinking about fear, or it can be so pronounced that you're so fearful of the decision that you make is going to lead to this or that or whatever the case may be, that you don't make a decision, or you make a decision based on that, like you just said,
not to do something.
I think that's a really interesting concept, and I think fear can drive people to decisions and away from decisions. For me, I think, and it's something that easier said than done, but really just trying to live in the moment. And it's something that I sit here and like talk about this with you, and it's like, again, and it goes back to the don't expect, never assume, and the patience and all these kind of topics that we've kind of touched on. It's trying to stay within the moment, and again, that's easier said than done. Like that's a really difficult thing. We talked about this on the course too, but emotion driving decisions or driving a reaction, it's typically not the action that leads to your suffering or your disappointment or your whatever the case may be. It's your reaction to whatever's happened, and not take, so like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Great.
It's a great read. It's very short.
Me and my girlfriend read that together, actually.
It's a fantastic read, but one of the big agreements in that is like, don't take things personally. And again, it's like you read this amazing educational stuff, and there's so profound insight.
And it makes so much sense immediately when you read it.
And you're like, yes, I'm going to do it. And like for the next 20 minutes you do it, and then you're like, oh shit, what were those agreements? Like what was it? But one of them is, don't take things personally. And I think that's something that is important to really kind of think about. And oftentimes when emotions come into play, we tend to take everything personally.
And stuff fear, that's not a reflection of you at all.
Exactly. So, fear is definitely a motivator in some ways for me. I'm not that fearful, especially like in the business context.
You seem like you're willing to take risks. And understanding them.
In entrepreneurship, I think risk taking is. That's what entrepreneurship is, risk taking, right? So it's not that I guess I'm fearful of a lot of things on that side of life. I guess in business, I'm not really fearful of a decision that I'll make, but there are subtle things that kind of creep into your mind. But this all goes back to the answer being just live in the moment. At least do your best, and that's another agreement. Try your best, right? Try your best to live in the moment, and fear can be healthy too. I think in a lot of ways, fear can be really a healthy thing that can maybe help shift your decision making in a way that kind of protects you.
Definitely.
But at times, sometimes those fears that creep in, you have to find a way to overcome them and make a decision that kind of embraces them. But living in the moment is probably the best piece there. And again, easier said than done. Now, and that's the thing. You're right. You're not going to set every goal that you have. It's a good idea to set them in the first place. I think that's an important part. But I think the idea ultimately is like, if you don't achieve it, then it's, okay, let's reset. Now what do we need to do to get there, right? So whether it's in golf or business or whatever the case may be, sometimes you have to take a step back, and just reset your approach. Maybe it's the next round, maybe it's the next business decision you make, but hey, you got to learn from those experiences to make them better the next time.
You can't get better without having some reflection.
No doubt.
Having the goals gives you measurables to
Absolutely.
then say, okay, how far off are we on this, factor here?
Yeah. And what went wrong?
Exactly.
Like
What went wrong? What can we do better next time?
exactly. Yeah.
All right, we got 20 feet, pretty straight. I think it's going to fall off to the right, maybe a ball.
Yep.
Having unrealistic expectations for what you're going to do out there,
Yep.
it's a key to being frustrated. It's like a
Yes.
real recipe
Yes.
for getting mad quick.
Well, and your golf game can go to shit
Exactly.
easily, right?
Yeah.
Like if you show up to the round, like you've never broken 100 before,
Right, yes.
right? And you're like, today I'm going to shoot 72.
Exactly. You
And then
have a bad day.
your first drive is in the woods or in the water, and you're like, well, there go. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you've had an unrealistic expectation for the round, for the day, and then you're just suffering through the rest of the 18 holes.
Exactly.
And that sucks. Like that's not fun. I think we kind of set a pretty realistic expectation.
Yeah.
But honestly, I wasn't sure to expect. I wasn't sure how I was going to play today.
Me either. You
This is
never
my
know.
first day playing with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
on camera, it's a bit different.
absolutely.
There's a little bit of pressure.
But it was. I think I was able to kind of go into today without. There was no assumption of, hey, we're gonna do this, or expectation of, hey, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what made it more fun. You know what I mean?
good to hear.
I think I held back on throwing my club all day long, which was really good. But again, practicing patience and a little bit of restraint, if you will.
Discipline.
But yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Bombs. Hell yeah. Well, that was amazing.
Removing expectation and assumptions can protect you in a lot of ways.
I agree.
And in a lot of different facets of life, whether it's golf or it's business or it's just, a personal relationship you have with somebody or whatever the case may be. And it's not necessarily like ignorance is bliss. Like it's not always the answer, but if you don't have, these expectations or assumptions, or our mind tends to wander naturally,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And I think harnessing your mind and your focus is really important and can be helpful in every facet of life.
For sure.